The city of Nexara had always been alive at night, but tonight it seemed to hum with something different. Neon lights bounced off the towering skyscrapers, their reflections rippling on the metallic streets below. Floating cars streaked past, leaving trails of light that faded into the darkness. Yet beneath this modern spectacle, the city had secrets humans barely dared to imagine. Ancient beings lurked in forgotten corners, hidden in ruins that no human had entered for centuries. One of them, the most feared and mysterious of all, was Queen Leora, the vampire who ruled the nocturnal clans of Nexara. Evan, a young human scientist, had heard the rumors. They said no one who entered her domain returned alive. Some said she was a goddess, others whispered she was a nightmare in human form, but Evan was not one to be scared by stories. He was curious, the kind of curiosity that burned hotter than fear. Tonight he carried his small bag of tools and a relic that pulsed softly in his hands, a device meant to detect life energy, something humanity had only begun to understand. He slipped past the city guards who patrolled the abandoned districts and made his way to the ruins of an old cathedral. The building was enormous, its spires reaching into the night sky like skeletal fingers. Its walls, cracked and covered in ivy, seemed to hum with history. Evan stepped inside, the wooden doors groaning as they closed behind him. The air was thick with dust and something older, something alive that didn't belong to humans. He activated his device, the small screen flickering as it scanned the area. A faint glow indicated a powerful presence, far beyond anything he had ever encountered. The temperature dropped suddenly, his breath forming clouds in the cold air. Then, from the shadows of the cathedral, she appeared. Leora. She was taller than any human, her movements fluid and impossibly graceful. Her skin was pale, almost glowing under the faint light of the ruins. Her eyes, dark as obsidian, seemed to look straight into Evan's soul. Her hair flowed around her like a river of black silk. There was power in her presence, a command that made the very walls feel smaller, and yet there was something else, something that made him take a step closer rather than run. "Are you sure you want me, human?" she asked, her voice soft but carrying authority like a wind that could either calm or destroy. Evan swallowed. His heart raced, but his hands were steady. He did not speak immediately, letting the silence stretch, letting himself feel the weight of her gaze. He could have run. Any normal person would have. But something inside him told him to stay. I want to understand," he finally said. His voice was quiet but firm. "I want to learn what you are, what you do. I want to see the truth." Leora tilted her head, as if considering whether he was worthy of her attention. She stepped closer, the sound of her boots echoing in the cathedral, soft and deliberate. "Few humans dare speak like that," she said. "Most are too afraid. Curiosity does not often save them." Evan held his device tightly, but he did not back away. "I am not most humans," he said, and in that moment he knew he meant it. Leora smiled slightly, revealing the faintest glimpse of sharp teeth, enough to remind him of the danger he faced. She circled him slowly, her eyes never leaving his. "You are brave or foolish," she said, almost to herself. "Perhaps a little of both. But that may be interesting." Evan felt a thrill he could not explain. This was not fear. It was the pull of something larger than himself, something ancient. He realized then that he had crossed a threshold. By entering this cathedral, by standing before her, he was no longer just a human exploring a ruin. He was part of a story older than the city itself. Leora stopped in front of him. Her presence was overwhelming, yet there was a curiosity in her gaze that made him believe he had a chance. "You are far from safe, human," she said. "One wrong step, one miscalculation, and you could be nothing." Evan nodded slowly. "I know. But I also know that to discover anything new you must take risks. I am ready." For the first time in centuries, Leora felt something stir inside her, something she had not felt in a long time. Most humans were predictable, weak, fleeting. Evan was none of those things. He had courage, yes, but more than that, he had something that intrigued her, a mind unafraid to seek truth, even when danger loomed. "Very well," she said. "Come with me. If you survive, you may learn what no human has ever known." She led him through a hidden passage behind the cathedral's altar, a spiral staircase descending into darkness. Evan followed, his curiosity outweighing any fear he felt. The air grew colder, the walls slick with moisture, and the faint glow of crystals began to appear, casting strange colors across the passage. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. The passage opened into a vast chamber, unlike the ruined cathedral above. The chamber was massive, with ceilings lost in shadow. Pools of liquid light shimmered across the floor, and walls glowed faintly with patterns that seemed almost alive. Ancient symbols pulsed with energy, moving like they were breathing. Evan's eyes widened. This was not just a ruin or a hiding place. This was a kingdom hidden beneath the city, untouched by human hands for centuries. Leora stood in the center, her arms spread slightly as if to show him the space. "Welcome to my domain," she said. "Few humans have ever stepped here willingly, and none have returned unchanged." Evan moved carefully, taking in every detail. The chamber was alive in a way he could feel in his bones. The energy here was strong, almost overwhelming, but he could also sense its rhythm, its patterns. His device pulsed faster as it measured life forces around him, not just hers, but something deeper, something that had existed long before humanity. "You see," Leora said, her voice echoing softly, "this world is not meant for humans. Your kind is fragile, temporary, but occasionally," she paused, studying him closely, "occasionally one appears who is different. Perhaps you are that one." Evan met her gaze. "Different how?" he asked. "Different in ways you do not yet understand," she said. "I have lived centuries, seen empires rise and fall. I have watched humans destroy themselves and yet survive against all odds. And yet you," she tilted her head, her eyes narrowing slightly. "You do not flee, you do not tremble, you seek." He felt a strange connection in that moment, as if centuries of loneliness and observation were being poured into his presence. He realized that she was not only testing him but offering him a rare chance to see beyond the veil, to touch something eternal. "I want to learn," he said again, his voice stronger this time. "I want to understand. I want to see the truth of your world and maybe, in the process, understand my own." Leora considered him silently for a long moment. The chamber seemed to respond to her thoughts, the liquid light pulsing more brightly, the symbols on the walls moving as if in anticipation. Then she smiled. "Very well," she said. "Tonight you cross a line that no human has dared cross. Tonight you enter my world not as prey but as something else." Evan felt the weight of her words settle over him. He was stepping into a world of shadows and power, a place where life and death were measured differently, where time was not linear, and where every choice could mean survival or oblivion. And yet, he did not feel fear. He felt a spark of excitement, the thrill of discovery, and a strange sense of destiny. As Leora extended her hand, inviting him further into the depths of her domain, Evan took it. The moment their hands touched, a current of energy passed through him, and the chamber seemed to come alive around them. He realized that he had not just chosen to follow her. He had chosen to step into a new reality, one where humans and beings like her might find common ground, where courage and curiosity could change the rules of existence. And so, under the glowing lights of an ancient hidden kingdom, in the heart of a city that would never know what had happened, a human and a vampire queen met. A connection sparked that would change both of their destinies forever. For Evan, it was only the beginning. For Leora, it was a rare, unexpected shift, a moment that reminded her that even in centuries of solitude, surprises could still come, and even humans could be remarkable. The night stretched on, endless and full of possibilities. Shadows danced along the crystal walls, and the pulse of life in the chamber seemed to echo the heartbeat of both human and vampire. And as Evan looked into her eyes, he knew that this was no ordinary encounter. This was a crossing of worlds, the start of something dangerous, magnificent, and unforgettable. Evan followed Leora deeper into the labyrinth beneath the cathedral. Each step seemed heavier than the last, not because of the distance, but because of the weight of the world he had just entered. The walls of the passage were smooth like polished stone, but they shimmered faintly, reflecting light that didn't seem to come from anywhere. Strange symbols moved along the surfaces as he passed, and he realized they weren't static. They seemed to watch him, to measure him, to judge him. Leora moved gracefully, her steps silent, almost floating as if she had no connection to the floor at all. Evan stumbled occasionally, his human limbs clumsy compared to her centuries of practiced elegance. But she did not scold him or express impatience. Instead, she waited, letting him find his rhythm in her world. Finally, they emerged into a vast chamber. It was enormous, far larger than anything Evan could have imagined. The ceiling arched high above, lost in shadow, and the walls were carved with patterns that glowed with soft, liquid light. Pools of water, or perhaps some unknown substance, shimmered across the floor, reflecting the faint colors in the walls. The air smelled sweet, like flowers he had never known, mixed with the sharp tang of metal and something else, something ancient. "This is my domain," Leora said softly, her voice carrying in the chamber like music. "Few humans ever see it, and even fewer survive their curiosity. Yet here you are, walking willingly." Evan's eyes roamed over every detail. There were structures here, spires of crystal, bridges suspended in mid-air, doors carved into walls that seemed to lead nowhere. Strange creatures moved in the shadows, silent and graceful, their eyes glowing faintly. Vampires, he assumed, though they looked different from the tales he had heard. Their bodies were lithe and their movements almost liquid, like they were part of the chamber itself. They observed him quietly, their eyes studying him without hostility. "Do they trust me?" Evan asked quietly. Leora smiled faintly. "Trust is a human concept. They do not fear you, which is enough for now." He nodded, trying to absorb everything. "It's incredible," he said. "I've never seen anything like this." "It is older than your city, older than your people," Leora replied. "Much older than the humans who think they rule the night. This place has survived because it does not rely on strength alone. It relies on knowledge, on patience, on understanding." Evan felt a thrill of excitement. Here, in this hidden world, he was no longer just a scientist in a city of machines and neon. He was an explorer, a witness to a civilization that had endured centuries. And for the first time in his life, he felt that his curiosity, the very trait that had often been criticized as foolish, was the key to survival. Leora led him to a smaller chamber, circular and filled with a soft, ambient light. In the center was a table carved from a single piece of obsidian, smooth and black as night. On it lay objects that shimmered with energy, crystals that pulsed in rhythm with the chamber, small machines of unknown purpose, and scrolls covered in symbols Evan could not read. "This is where I study," Leora said. "I observe the city above, the humans, the world beyond. I learn, I measure, and I prepare. Even beings like me cannot ignore the march of time." Evan stepped closer, his fingers hovering over the crystals. "May I?" he asked. "Touching is acceptable," Leora said. "Breaking is not." He picked up a crystal. Warmth spread through his fingers and images flashed before his eyes, fleeting visions of cities rising and falling, humans laughing, crying, fighting, dying. The crystal showed moments of life, moments of history captured in light and energy. Evan gasped, nearly dropping it. This is incredible," he whispered. "You can see everything all at once." "Not everything," Leora said, "but enough to understand patterns. Enough to know what is important and what is irrelevant." Evan spent hours exploring her chamber, asking questions, studying objects, and learning slowly. Leora answered him patiently, though never revealing more than she thought he could handle. Sometimes she would watch him in silence, her eyes dark and unreadable, and Evan would feel as if she were weighing him, calculating whether he belonged here. As the night wore on, Leora spoke of the human world above and the dangers that threatened it. Rogue mercenaries, alien explorers, and even humans themselves, she explained, were constantly at odds with one another, yet she rarely intervened. The vampire clans preferred to remain in the shadows, observing and understanding, rather than fighting directly. Humans are fragile, she said at one point. Yet you survive, you adapt, you endure. There is value in your species even if you do not recognize it. Evan felt a mix of pride and humility. We are not perfect, he said, but we try, we learn, we endure, as you said. She studied him, her gaze softening. You are unlike most humans I have observed, she said. Most would have run, would have begged for mercy, or would have tried to steal what they could and flee. You seek understanding, even when the risk is death. The hours passed like minutes. Evan learned about energy manipulation, about the subtle ways vampires could sense life forces, about the ancient history of her people. And as he learned, he also began to feel something he could not explain, a bond forming, not of fear or dominance, but of mutual respect and curiosity. Finally, Leora led him to a balcony carved into the chamber wall, overlooking a vast underground city. Lights glowed faintly in the distance, signaling movement. Vampires walked along streets invisible from above, trading goods, speaking in languages Evan could not understand. It was alive, vibrant, and terrifying in its beauty. This is my people, Leora said quietly. They live in the shadows, but they are not weak. They endure because they understand the balance of power, the importance of patience, and the value of knowledge. And now you are among them. Evan stared in awe. It's amazing, he said. I never imagined such a world existed beneath the city I know. You are not like the others, Leora said, and that is why you may survive here, but survival is not enough. You must choose whether to embrace this world fully or return to the surface and forget what you have seen. Evan's heart pounded. Return, forget. Yes, she said. You can leave now. You can go back to your human life, to your city, to your people. You can forget this place, forget me. Or, she paused, letting the choice hang in the air. Or you can stay. You can accept what this world offers and step into it fully. There is no middle ground. Curiosity brought you here, and curiosity will decide your fate. He thought of the surface city, of the life he had always known, but it felt small, insignificant compared to what he had seen. His mind raced with possibilities, knowledge, adventure, power, understanding, and the chance to stand beside someone who had lived centuries and seen worlds change. I want to stay, he said finally, his voice steady. I want to learn. I want to understand. I want to be part of this. Leora studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded. Very well, she said. You have made your choice. Few humans have the courage to do so, and even fewer have the mind to survive it. She extended her hand, and Evan took it without hesitation. The moment their hands touched, a current of energy passed through him, stronger than anything he had ever felt. He felt connected, not just to her, but to the chamber, the city beneath, and the countless lives that had passed through this hidden world. Now begins your training, she said. You will learn to move in shadows, to sense life energy, to understand the delicate balance of this world. You will also learn the dangers. For in embracing this world, you accept the risks, and the consequences may be greater than anything you have imagined. The following hours were filled with lessons. Leora showed him how to sense the flow of energy in the chamber, how to anticipate movements of those around him, and how to stay alert even when nothing seemed to threaten him. Evan struggled at first, clumsy and unsure, but he improved quickly. His human mind, sharp and adaptable, grasped concepts that even some younger vampires had not mastered in decades. You are learning quickly, Leora said, her eyes glowing faintly. Faster than I expected. Evan smiled, though exhausted. I have to, he said. If I'm going to survive here, I have to learn everything I can. Leora's expression softened, almost imperceptibly. You may survive, she said, but remember, knowledge alone is not enough. Strength of will, courage, and understanding of others are what will truly keep you alive. And most importantly, remember this: trust is rare here, and loyalty rarer. Choose wisely whom you follow and whom you protect. As dawn approached above the surface, the underground chamber remained alive with light and energy. Evan realized he no longer thought of himself as merely a human exploring ruins. He was part of something greater, a world hidden, powerful, ancient. And he knew that his choice to stay, to embrace Leora and her world, would define everything that followed. And in that moment, standing in the soft glow of her hidden city, Evan understood what it truly meant to cross a line no human had ever crossed willingly. He was no longer just a visitor. He was a participant, a student, and perhaps, in time, a partner in a world older and more dangerous than any human had imagined. The days that followed were unlike anything Evan had ever experienced. He woke each night in the underground chamber, surrounded by the soft glow of crystal pools and the hum of ancient energy. Time here moved differently, or perhaps he was simply learning to perceive it differently. He was no longer just a human in a vampire world. He was a student, an observer, and increasingly, a participant in its rhythm. Leora began his training with patience and precision. She taught him to sense life energy, to feel the presence of those around him without seeing them. At first, it was confusing. Evan would reach out with his mind, trying to detect the smallest pulse of movement, only to be overwhelmed by the flow of the chamber and the countless hidden energies within it. You are too focused on what you see, Leora said, watching him struggle. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. The world is not only what your eyes perceive. Life, intent, thought, all of these can be felt if you allow yourself to listen. Evan closed his eyes and tried to calm his mind. He breathed deeply, feeling the pulse of the crystals beneath his feet, the movement of air in the chamber, the faint vibrations of Leora's own energy. Slowly he began to sense patterns, a rhythm of life that ran through the chamber like veins of light. His heart pounded in excitement. I think I can feel it, he whispered. Good, Leora said. That is the first step. You must learn to trust what you feel, even more than what you see. The day will come when your senses will save you more than any weapon or tool ever could. Training was exhausting, but Evan's human mind adapted quickly. He discovered he had an unusual aptitude for learning energy manipulation, something that took younger vampires decades to master. Leora seemed both impressed and cautious. She had seen humans with courage before, but intelligence and adaptability combined with courage. That was rare indeed. As part of his training, Leora began to teach him stealth. They moved through the underground city, invisible to most of the vampire citizens who ignored them, absorbed in their own affairs. Evan learned to tread lightly, to blend with shadows, to predict movement, to remain unseen. At first, it felt like a game, but soon he realized it was a necessity. In Leora's world, visibility could mean danger. You must remember, Leora said as they crouched in the shadows above a bustling street, your presence can disrupt the natural order. Humans are fragile, and not every vampire will tolerate your intrusion. There are those among my people who would see you as a threat, not an ally. Use your mind as much as your strength. Evan nodded. He understood. Survival here was about more than courage. It was about perception, adaptability, and respect for the balance of power. But training was not the only thing that filled their nights. Slowly, a bond began to form between Evan and Leora, built not on fear or domination, but on mutual respect. Leora began to reveal small fragments of her history, stories of centuries spent observing the human world, the rise and fall of empires, and the mistakes of both humans and vampires. Evan listened intently, fascinated by the depth of her memory, the weight of her experience, and the way she viewed life as something fragile yet enduring. "You have seen humans at their worst," Evan said one night as they stood atop a crystal bridge overlooking the underground city. "Why did you choose to stay hidden instead of guiding them?" Leora's gaze softened, almost imperceptibly. "Because interference can destroy more than it helps. Humans must learn, adapt, and survive on their own. Only then will their choices carry meaning. Too much guidance, too much control, and they lose their value, their strength, their potential." Evan considered this. "So you watch and wait, and sometimes you let them choose their own path." "Yes," Leora said quietly. "Even if it leads to mistakes, even if it brings pain, that is the nature of growth for humans and for all living beings." Their bond strengthened further during moments of shared silence, when words were unnecessary. Evan began to understand her moods, her subtle gestures, the way her eyes would narrow when danger approached, or soften when she sensed trust. Leora, in turn, began to value his presence, not just as a student, but as a companion capable of insight, courage, and perspective she rarely encountered among her own kind. One night, as they moved through the lower tunnels of the city, Evan sensed a disturbance in the flow of energy. Something unnatural, something aggressive. He paused, pressing a hand to the wall and focusing. "Leora, something's coming," he whispered. She immediately tensed, her senses sharpening. "You are correct," she said. "This is not a human threat, not yet, but it approaches quickly and it is dangerous." A low rumble echoed through the tunnels. Shadows flickered against the walls as shapes moved, fast and deliberate. Evan felt the pulse of life energy, fragmented and chaotic, and realized that this was no ordinary enemy. The aliens had come. "They are mercenaries from beyond," Leora explained, her voice calm but firm. "They hunt humans for resources, for knowledge, for control. They will not stop until they have what they want." Evan felt a surge of fear but also determination. He had trained, learned, and adapted. He would not flee. "What do we do?" he asked. "We prepare," Leora said. "And we fight smart, not hard. Strength alone will not save you. Strategy, observation, and cooperation are our weapons." They moved swiftly through the underground city, alerting selected members of the vampire clans. Evan saw the creatures of the night he had once only observed from a distance, now moving with purpose, coordinating silently. The alien mercenaries were strong, but they were predictable in their aggression. Humans, vampires, and creatures of the night could work together to counter them, but only if they acted with precision and understanding. The first encounter came in the narrow tunnels that connected the lower city to the surface. Shadows leapt and collided as the mercenaries attacked, their technology and weapons unlike anything Evan had seen. But he and Leora moved together seamlessly. Evan directed energy flows, sensing enemy movements before they occurred. Leora struck with precision, disabling threats before they could harm anyone. Their combined knowledge, human ingenuity and vampire skill, turned the tide, but it was only the beginning. In the heat of battle, Evan faced his first true moral test. A group of mercenaries cornered a human colony above the surface. He could follow Leora and attack another threat in the tunnels, securing their strategic position, or he could risk exposure and save the humans directly. Every instinct told him that humans were fragile, that exposure could mean death. But his courage and sense of responsibility would not allow him to hesitate. "I have to save them," he whispered to himself. Leora's hand touched his shoulder. "Then do so," she said, her voice calm. "But remember, risk is part of choice. Consequences will follow. Choose wisely." Evan ran, moving faster than he had ever moved, guided by the energy flows he had learned to sense. Shadows and light blurred together, but he stayed focused. He reached the colony, using both knowledge and courage to divert the mercenaries and protect the humans. The attack was chaotic, terrifying, but he succeeded. For the first time, he realized that humans could survive even when threatened by forces far beyond their understanding, if they had guidance, courage, and allies willing to stand with them. When he returned to Leora, bruised but triumphant, she studied him quietly. "You chose wisely," she said. "Most would have followed the easy path, avoided danger, but you faced it. That is what separates survival from mere existence." Evan nodded, exhausted but proud. "I couldn't not help them," he admitted. "Neither could I," Leora said softly. "But now you see why choice matters. Courage matters. Knowledge matters. Humanity has potential not because it is strong, but because it can adapt, endure, and rise when faced with impossible odds. You are beginning to understand." In the days that followed, Evan's reputation grew among the vampires. They saw in him a human capable of courage, intelligence, and loyalty. He was no longer just a student. He was a bridge between two worlds, a symbol of the potential for cooperation between species that rarely trusted one another. And in the quiet moments, when the tunnels were still and the city beneath the city hummed with ancient life, Evan and Leora shared conversations and observations that went beyond training. They spoke of the human world, of choices, of dreams and regrets. Leora began to trust him, allowing glimpses of vulnerability, moments where the immortal weight of centuries lifted just slightly in his presence. Evan, in turn, began to see her not as a monster or legend, but as a being shaped by experience, curiosity, and the weight of responsibility. One night, standing on a high balcony overlooking the lower city, Evan turned to Leora. "I never imagined I'd be here," he said. "Not in this world, not with you, but I also feel like I belong somehow." Leora's gaze softened, and for the first time her smile was unguarded. "You are not like other humans," she said quietly. "You adapt, you learn, you choose. That is why you survive. That is why you are here." Evan felt a warmth in those words, not from the air or the crystals, but from a sense of connection he had never known. He realized that courage alone was not enough. Trust, respect, and understanding could be just as powerful. And he had earned that, not through fear or force, but through choice. As dawn approached above the surface, Evan knew that the challenges were only beginning. The alien threat would return, stronger and more relentless. The human world above would continue to teeter on the edge of chaos. And yet, he felt ready. With knowledge, courage, and the guidance of Leora, he understood that humans were capable of more than anyone had imagined. He also knew that his bond with Leora was no longer simply that of student and teacher. It was a partnership, fragile but growing, built on respect, choice, and shared experience. Together, they had begun to change the rules of survival, showing that humans and vampires could achieve what neither could alone. And in the quiet moments, when shadows moved softly across the chambers and the city beneath the city pulsed with life, Evan felt a sense of destiny. He had chosen this world, and it had chosen him. And whatever challenges awaited, he knew that courage, intelligence, and trust would guide him, and perhaps, in time, define the fate of both humans and vampires. The city of Nexara above had never been quieter, yet beneath its shining towers, a storm was brewing. The alien mercenaries who had tested Evan and Leora before were returning, stronger, faster, and more organized. They sought humans for knowledge, for power, and for domination. Their fleet of ships hovered silently above, hidden from the city's eyes, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Evan stood at the edge of the underground city, overlooking the glowing pools and bridges, the labyrinth of tunnels and streets inhabited by vampires. He had trained for this, learned their movements, understood their strategies. But this was different. This was no small encounter or single skirmish. This was war, and the stakes were higher than he had ever faced. Leora appeared beside him, silent and commanding, her presence radiating centuries of experience. Her eyes scanned the tunnels below, the movements of her people, the flow of energy that indicated enemy positions. "They are stronger than before," she said. "And they will not stop. Their intent is absolute." Evan nodded. "We can't just fight them like before. We need strategy, coordination, everything we've learned." "Exactly," Leora replied. "And that is why you are here, Evan. Humans are adaptable in ways vampires are not. Your mind, your instincts, your courage, they are our advantage. You will help lead as you have already begun to do." The vampires gathered quickly, silent, efficient, their movements like a single organism. Evan felt the energy of the city beneath him, the rhythm of life in every shadow, every crystal, every heartbeat. He realized that the underground world was alive, and he could sense its pulse, its potential, its strength. With Leora guiding him, he felt ready to face the mercenaries. The first wave came through the tunnels near the outer gates. They moved like a storm, metallic and deadly, their weapons glowing with an unfamiliar energy. Evan and Leora positioned themselves strategically, guiding the vampires to flank the invaders. "Watch their energy patterns," Leora whispered. "They are predictable if you observe carefully. Their strength is in numbers but not in subtlety." Evan focused, feeling the currents of life and intent flowing through the mercenaries. He directed vampires to intercept, signaling movements with hand gestures and subtle cues. The battle was chaotic. Shadows leapt, weapons clashed, and the sound of energy pulses filled the tunnels. Despite the chaos, Evan felt calm. He moved instinctively, anticipating threats, warning allies, guiding attacks. Leora fought beside him, precise and deadly, her centuries of experience unmatched. They worked in tandem, human and vampire, mind and skill intertwined. Hours passed, yet the battle did not relent. The aliens adapted, changing tactics, but Evan was already adapting faster. He analyzed patterns, predicted movements, and used their aggression against them. Vampires moved like shadows, humans were protected, and the mercenaries began to falter. But then came the critical moment. A squad of mercenaries reached the surface colony, a human settlement vulnerable and unprepared. Evan realized instantly what was happening. He could either continue with Leora below, maintaining control of the tunnels, or risk everything to save the humans above. His instincts, courage, and sense of responsibility made the choice clear. "I have to go," he said, turning to Leora. She studied him, her eyes intense. "You are human," she said softly, "but your choice is brave. Do what you must." Evan leapt through the tunnels, moving faster than he had ever moved before, guided by his knowledge of the city, the currents of energy, and sheer determination. Shadows swirled around him as he emerged above, seeing the colony under attack. The humans fought bravely, but they were outmatched. The mercenaries moved like machines, precise and unrelenting. Evan called upon everything he had learned: the energy flows, the subtle manipulations of life force, the lessons of strategy and stealth. He moved through the battle, guiding humans to safety, deflecting attacks and disrupting the invaders' coordination. His presence was a spark, igniting courage and hope among the humans. Leora joined him, descending from the shadows like a storm of darkness and power. Her presence alone turned the tide in their favor. The mercenaries, used to fear and submission, faltered against beings who moved with precision, intellect, and confidence. Evan and Leora fought side by side, anticipating each other's moves, covering weaknesses and striking with flawless timing. The battle raged across the colony, the underground city, and the tunnels connecting them. Evan realized that victory was not about brute force alone. It was about coordination, trust, and understanding. He guided humans to protect themselves, vampires to act strategically, and together they formed a defense unlike anything the mercenaries had faced. In the heart of the battle, Evan faced a mercenary captain, stronger and faster than any enemy he had confronted before. Its movements were alien, unpredictable, yet Evan anticipated them. Using the environment, the energy flows, and his understanding of the enemy to outmaneuver it. With a final surge of focus and courage, he defeated the captain, signaling the beginning of the mercenaries' retreat. Leora observed silently, a faint smile appearing on her lips. "You have grown," she said quietly. "Not just in skill, but in judgment, in courage, and in understanding." Evan, exhausted but triumphant, felt a sense of accomplishment he had never known. He had survived, guided others, and faced threats beyond imagination. But more importantly, he had realized something essential. Humans were not weak, and their potential was far greater than anyone, even vampires, had imagined. The aftermath of the battle left the underground city and the surface colony scarred but victorious. The mercenaries retreated, their forces diminished and disorganized. The humans looked at Evan and Leora with a mixture of awe and gratitude, understanding, for the first time, that they had allies in the shadows who would fight for their survival. As the city returned to its normal rhythm above, Evan and Leora stood atop a bridge in the underground city, watching the glow of the pools and the movements of their people. The bond between them had deepened, built on shared struggle, trust, and understanding. "You chose to stay," Leora said softly, her eyes reflecting the light of the crystals. "And by doing so, you changed more than your own destiny. You changed mine and the destiny of your people as well." Evan looked at her, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with energy or life force. "I didn't just choose to stay," he said. "I chose to fight, to learn, to be part of something greater than myself. I didn't realize it at the time, but I think I also chose you." Leora's eyes softened, and for the first time her expression was vulnerable in a way that centuries of immortality had rarely allowed. "And I chose you back," she said quietly. "Not because you are human, but because you understand choice, courage, and responsibility. You are remarkable, Evan." He felt the weight of her words, the truth in them. Humans were fragile, yes, but they had courage, ingenuity, and the ability to grow beyond their limitations. And in standing beside Leora, he had seen that humans and vampires could achieve something extraordinary together. In the weeks that followed, the underground city thrived once more. Humans and vampires worked together to repair damage, strengthen defenses, and share knowledge. Evan became a symbol of cooperation and courage, a bridge between two worlds that had long feared each other. He trained others, shared what he had learned, and continued to grow under Leora's guidance. Leora, in turn, found a companion who challenged her, inspired her, and reminded her that even in centuries of solitude, the unexpected could still happen. Her people observed their partnership, understanding that humans, when trusted and respected, could be allies rather than prey. One evening, as the underground city glowed softly beneath the surface of Nexara, Evan and Leora stood together, watching the quiet flow of energy, the movement of shadows, and the life that pulsed in every corner. "We have done more than survive," Evan said quietly. "We've changed the way our worlds see each other," Leora nodded. "Yes, and this is only the beginning. Humans will continue to grow, to adapt, to endure, and we will be here, guiding when necessary, learning when possible, and protecting when required." Evan smiled. I think we've proven something. That courage, intelligence, and trust can overcome even the greatest threats. That humans are capable of more than anyone imagined. And that even the oldest of us," Leora said, "can still learn, still be surprised, still choose." They stood in silence for a long moment, the glow of the underground city reflecting in their eyes, the pulse of life beneath them steady and strong. Evan realized that he had come to this hidden world as a curious human seeking understanding, but he was leaving, or rather becoming part of it, as something more, a symbol of courage, hope, and the potential for cooperation between worlds. As dawn approached above the city, casting pale light on the towers of Nexara, Evan and Leora prepared for the future together. The alien threat would eventually return, and new challenges would rise. But now, humans had allies in the shadows, and vampires had partners in courage and intelligence. The balance had shifted, and for the first time the two species stood united in strength, wisdom, and respect. Evan placed a hand on Leora's, feeling the warmth and the pulse of energy between them. "Whatever comes next," he said, "we face it together." "Yes," Leora replied, her voice calm and certain. "Together." And in that moment, the city above Nexara shone in the early morning light, unaware of the battles fought beneath it, of the bonds forged in shadows, and of the humans and vampires who had chosen to rise above fear, distrust, and danger. The story of a human who chose to follow a vampire queen, and a queen who chose a human in return, became a silent legend, a tale of courage, choice, and the extraordinary potential of humanity when paired with wisdom, patience, and trust. It was a story that would not be told in books or songs, but would live in the lives of those who survived, adapted, and endured. Evan looked out over the city and felt hope, pride, and determination. He had crossed the line into a world he could not have imagined, faced challenges beyond belief, and emerged not only alive but stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever destiny awaited. Leora watched him, centuries of solitude softening into something rare, companionship. Together they would face the unknown, protect the fragile, and guide the strong. And together they would prove that courage, intelligence, and choice could shape the fate of worlds. As night fell again, the underground city glimmered with life. The humans and vampires united, the threat of the mercenaries quelled for now. And Evan, once a mere human curious about the world, now stood as a symbol of hope, bravery, and the extraordinary bond that could exist between species, no matter how different. The city of Nexara slept above, oblivious to the hidden war beneath, while below, a human and a vampire queen prepared for the future, side by side, their choices forever intertwined, their courage an unbroken light in the darkness. And so the legacy began of trust, of courage, and of humanity rising not by strength alone, but by choice, intelligence, and the courage to follow what seemed impossible.